When should you finally let go? When should you finally figure out all the efforts that you're making, all the energy that you're wasting will not lead you anywhere? In this video, I'm going to share with you some signs, the dynamic of relationships that cannot be recovered. And sometimes it happens. Sometimes it's impossible to get back with an ex, regardless of who you're working with, whether it's myself or anyone else. And the thing that I hate the most is for people to waste their time, waste months or years of their life trying to repair, trying to get back with someone who A, doesn't deserve them and prevents them from moving forward. So this video is very important. Watch it if you're not sure whether you want to get back, whether you have any possibilities of getting back with your ex. Jingle.
IGetMyExBack.com. Everyone deserves a second chance.
So you have to understand that sometimes we cling to a magnified idea of a relationship. We idealize our partner, we put that person on a pedestal. We fail to recognize that in a way that relationship was not necessarily also good for us, right? What you have to understand is statistically, most breakups are definitive. Right? Statistically, if you've been in this relationship maybe for a few years, you've had other relationships before, right? So statistically, most relationships won't work out. The problem that you have when you are going through a difficult breakup is that the way you assess the situation is more from an emotional point of view. The pain, the anxiety sort of paints another reality. My job in this video is to show you how you can analyze rationally, setting the emotions on the side, your situation. Very often when people come to see me and we have a first assessment together, I can see the situation more clearly than they can because there's an attachment, because there's an emotional investment. There's this idea of sunk cost. They invested so much in this relationship. They had this sort of loss that they feel that creates a sense of, I need this person again to feel better. But that prevents you from seeing things clearly. If you're confused and want also another way to assess the situation, there's a free quiz in the description where you can assess whether you can have any chance of getting back with your ex. Quick caveat. If you have a high score, that doesn't mean you will get back with your ex for sure. Nobody can guarantee that. Now, the way it's designed is that, and the way I ask my clients to take the quiz is because it's going to rule out all the cases where you actually have no option and then to move on. I think it's my responsibility to be upfront. It's not being pessimistic, but be clear that sometimes it's just impossible because what you had is not enough. What the dynamic, the way you guys broke up, is something you can't repair. And that happens, it's hard, it sucks, but that happens, and you have to face that reality. And the quicker you realize that, the faster you can move on and you can move forward. And that's the only thing that I wish you for. It's not necessary to get back with your ex, but it's to see clearly and to be able to move forward. So in this video, take some notes. There are a few prompts and questions. I want you to use this video, take a notepad, and spend some time today to answer those questions. So the first thing that will indicate it's going to be very hard for you guys to get back together is lack of communication. This is the first cause of breakup, and I think it's because we tend to put everything with miscommunication. The thing is, most people don't communicate properly. So basing your analysis on the fact that you didn't communicate properly is not enough. What is very important is how you would repair. So the thing is, you're not perfect, your partner, your ex is not perfect, I'm not perfect, nobody's perfect. What matters is what can we do to repair when we make a mistake, right? Especially in the context of a loving relationship. When we love that person, when we want to invest with this person, when we make a mistake, when we screw up, what are we doing to repair? What are we doing to make amends? Also assess whether you were able to communicate openly and honestly. This is very important because that will indicate whether you were truly yourself. For instance, if you had this sort of people-pleasing attitude where you felt you were doing things that you didn't necessarily enjoy, the question is, do you really want to be in that kind of a relationship? So it's really assessing the potential of the recovery. And it's going to be very hard to get back with someone who is not willing to come your way, because it takes two to get back together. It takes two to start a relationship. It also takes two to repair and recover from a breakup. And the second part, B, is really about what do you want? And it's very important. It's probably the most important question you need to ask yourself right now is what do you want? And the answer is not, I want my ex back. No, the answer is what do you want in terms of a relationship, ideal relationship, and try to tend to be closer to this ideal. Now, what about emotional connection? So the way I designed this presentation is really looking at different angles to have a big, accurate picture of your relationship. It's very important to look at the different angles. Sometimes we only focus on one side of this sort of object. It's very important to turn around and look at different angles. So emotional connection, which is obviously the hardest one to repair. I have historically a hard time helping people with that, because what happens is that after years of resentment, after years of lack of intimacy, lack of sex, lack of connection, you create a new baseline with your partner. And what happens is that partner at some stage feels like, I don't want this life anymore. So the question is not figuring out who's responsible for the dynamic, because I think it always takes two. It's kind of a chicken and egg situation. Really assess whether you haven't had too many years in this kind of roommate syndromes. So assess whether 6 months before the breakup you did enjoy spending time together. Assess whether you felt emotionally connected. So if you were, for instance, dating an avoidant, it's also important to assess whether this person was willing to open up. So obviously, an avoidant person like myself, we have a hard time opening up. However, it doesn't mean that we don't want to open up or that we don't aim to be closely connected to our partner. It's just that it's harder for us. So it's about how you can judge, depending on their attachment style, what they were willing to give you. What you have to assess is more of the motivation, not necessarily the result. So look at those things. And the important element as well is how you would support each other. Again, because we make mistakes, because we're not perfect, what you have to assess is not what people have done necessarily, but how they repaired, how they showed that they could support you. Whether they dismissed you or whether they were like, okay, let me help you out. It's very important, but again, in the context of a relationship recovery, the ability for your ex to have this sort of mindset of how can we repair, how can we change things is super important. So loss of trust, this one is very tricky because it really depends on people. Some people will never forgive something that has been done to them. Some people would. You know your ex better than me. Assess whether you've done something to break their trust and assess whether there's something you can do to repair. That's it. And then it's really down to them. Historically, I don't have a lot of people in that situation, people who cheated on their partner, etc. Maybe because they don't want their ex back afterwards, or I don't know. I don't want to make any conclusions to that, because I think it's quite frequent for people to. I think if you look at the US statistics, cheating is the the third reason people divorce. But I think cheating comes after that lack of emotional connection and after lack of communication in terms of sort of, if we draw a timeline, you communicate badly with your partner, you lose emotional connection, and then you cheat. And then people break up because they're one of them cheated on the other, but it comes after the whole process. So loss of trust, again, can you repair it? Is there something you can do? And about how can you show it and demonstrate that to your partner? And obviously, regaining trust is a process. And I've mentioned that to a client the other day. Getting back with an ex is also, in a way, the same process. Don't expect that, okay, I've made amends, I've changed those things, I broke up with my mistress or whatever, or I'm going through therapy, I'm trying to be a better person, etc., etc. Your ex will need to be convinced. And when the way to convince someone is not just to tell them and seeing them once, it's really about the sort of being consistent in your approach, in how you can show them, okay, I'm a new person. Every time you'll see me, you'll see that new person. And it takes a bit of time. So understand that regaining trust, getting back with an ex is a process. It takes several weeks of regular, slow progress to bring your partner to a level of confidence. So usually when I help my clients getting back with their ex, their exes are more, okay, I still have feelings for them, but I'm not sure. I'm like 20% sure whether I want to get back together. The job is to bring them to a level of certainty, of confidence above 50%, 60, 70%. And you don't do it in one date. You don't do it in one text. So people think like, oh, I'm going to send this letter and they fall back again. It doesn't work like this. They need to be convinced. They need to be brought on that journey. And that's your job, is to bring them on that journey. Another very difficult thing to repair is different life goals. So this happens sometimes when you have a long relationship, 10, 15, 20 years. Maybe the kids are leaving the house and you don't know what to do anymore. Your new career, you have to travel, life crisis, midlife crisis, or any sort of life crisis, where one feels, I have a new set of desires and needs. I want to have another life, right? And for some reason, they feel that this life that they had with you, and you, in that sense, is kind of a collateral damage of this realization. They feel, I don't want this life, I want a new life, right? And you're not part of that vision. So the only thing to do is perhaps let them experience a little bit this new life, right? Let them make a bit of mistakes, and see whether you can adjust in this new life. Maybe it's about, they want to change jobs and they want to travel the world. So is that something you can do? Is that something you can discuss? Also assess whether it's something you want, because the same way they've changed and they have new aspirations, new needs and desires. What about you? Maybe, if you have children and they left the house, maybe you also want to do something different. So it's an opportunity for you to assess this and realize what you want. Conflict is also something you need to assess when you look at the history of a relationship and whether a relationship can be recovered. Either you had too many conflicts, and that creates a precedent of like, okay, we need to break up because it's unbearable. And it seems that every time we have the conflict on the same topic, usually people fight for the same reason again and again and again without any resolution. So it feels like there's no other option. I've wasted 1 year, 2 years expressing those concerns, but it still like maybe we don't fight for a month or two, and then again, same argument on the same thing. The kids' education, you're working hard, maybe there's a addiction problem, and again, but it feels like it's a repeating pattern, and I don't want this. I'm done with that. So that's something you need to address. Also, if you've never had any conflict, for me, it's a red flag. It's important to disagree. It's important to work things out. If in your relationship you feel like we never fought, to me, that's a sign that there's something wrong, because that's a sign of lack of communication. So you need to assess if your partner is willing to discuss. Again, it takes two, and it's a question of timing. This video is not about the process on how to get back with an ex. It's just to really assess the relationship. If you want to know how to get back with an ex and the process, I've made other videos on that subject. And if you're not sure, there's a link to book a 15-minute call with me, and I'll explain and detail based on your situation, because obviously every situation is unique. It's funny because everyone who calls me tell me like, you'll see this situation is unique. And I was like, yeah, you always tell me this. And it's actually true. Every situation is unique. So I know there's a bit of limitation when I make those videos, because I'm trying to speak to everyone, but obviously there are always details and things that are really, really tailored or unique to your situation. Another element about conflict is whether your ex is able to forgive and move forward after argument. Some people, I've done that, you've said this, and there's no other way around, and I'm not going to change my mind. It's very hard. I can't change your ex's character, right? The only thing that you could do, the only thing that we could do, is work on yourself, address the things that need to be addressed. Market, in a way, this new personality, this new person. It's not new personality, this new person, this new life. And present yourself in a way you were when you met each other. Because the thing is, it's way easier for me to help people get back with the ex than coaching people on how to date random people. What you had is something you should leverage. And this is why it's important to assess what you had. Maybe the relationship itself was not as qualitative, was not as meaningful as you thought when you answer those questions. And it's very important to assess this because, again, I don't want you to waste your time. Another element is growth stagnation. It's very important in our life to feel a sense of growth, to feel that we evolve. There's nothing worse than stagnation. See your relationship a little bit like a lake. If the water is stagnates, the water would be like gross. If you have like fresh water coming in, that doesn't mean the image may be wrong. Let me know in the comment section. That doesn't mean you should include other partners in your relationship. Because I see like the river coming into the lake. Anyway, it's more about like bringing novelty and bringing growth in this relationship. And what you have to assess, and I've done a reel the other day, which was very popular, the idea of fixed and growth mindset. So fixed mindset, people who have a fixed mindset, they tend to feel we have a set of capabilities. Things are like this. Leopards never change their dots. And therefore, when we have a problem, the only option is to leave that situation. With a growth mindset, it's more about like when we have a challenge, regardless of the challenge, there are always ways to work on things because there are always ways for us to progress, to make it better. And again, it's not something you can necessarily change. If your partner is 40, 50, 60 years old and he has had a fixed mindset, it's going to be very hard for you to make them switch to a growth mindset. So maybe send them the TED talk about growth mindset from Karel Dweck, which is one of the most viewed TEDx. And I need to remind myself to put a link if you are interested in watching this TEDx. Really interesting growth mindset and fixed mindset. It's something that she developed. And now it's an entire field of study. Growth stagnation. So now boundaries and needs, obviously it's very important how to express, respect boundaries. When you have healthy boundaries in your relationship, you create the right foundation. You make it more resilient, basically. And so assess whether your boundaries were respected, whether you also respected your ex's boundaries. It's something that I assess in the quiz, for example, because it's very important. If you kept on disrespecting their boundaries, on crossing their boundaries, it's going to be very hard to get back together because they will always have this idea of like, if we get back together, things will always be the same. You never listened. You always, did things your way. So why would that change now? So it's very important to assess those things. So my approach, and this is my approach, my method, maybe you'll see other sort of approach online, but my approach is to really be real. When I have people on the phone for the 50-minute calls, sometimes I tell them like, you're wasting your time. Looking at the whole dynamic, the whole history, you're wasting your time. And I don't want people to waste their time, or I don't want to sell a dream of like, yes, if you follow my plan and my 90-day plan and you book that package or whatever, you're going to get back together. That doesn't work like this. So what is very important for you is to reflect and spend that time. Very often people like, okay, yeah, sure. Reflect. And then they go on Instagram and they look at their partners, the ex's story, and they're sort of obsessed about whether they're going to have a chance of getting back together, etc., etc. Use that time for reflection on your own. Be like a monk for a few weeks, really looking at those things. And understand it's not about how you feel, because the pain, the anxiety, this is because of the breakup, but that's not because of the relationship. These are two separate things. It's about, you need to assess how fulfilled you were in this relationship. So rather than focusing on the loss, focus on what you had. And in a way, very simple exercise, visualizing exercise, is to look at, rate your relationship 6 months before the breakup, 3 months before the breakup. What were the things that you would want to change in this relationship? If you can't answer those questions and it's hard for you to see like, okay, no, that was fine, it's going to be very easy for you to get back together, because your ex will believe the same, right? Maybe they left out of an impulse or feeling that it's not working out. Maybe they have a fear of commitment. But if you can't find any flaws, any sort of conflict or any sort of disagreement or things that are structural in the relationship, sooner or later, your partner will realize like, I kind of made a mistake. And in that sense, I think breakups can be a source of growth. Very often, and historically, personally as well, when you break up with someone, it's the opportunity to reflect on what you want again. I'm going to say that many times, but it's super important. When you're with someone, sometimes and that's the same with your partner, in a way for you, when you're the dumpy, I don't like this term, but when you're the dumpy, there's an element of putting that person on a pedestal, right? Because of the loss, because they took the decision for you. My job is to help you recalibrate how to assess things. And from your ex's point of view, the dumper, it's kind of the other way around. They feel that they're winning, they feel they're better than you, they feel that life will be better than you, and they need to recalibrate to feeling like, actually, now I realize what I've lost. So it's like making this thing. The problem is that going from my partner on pedestal to here, that means like healing. That means like emotional regulation. That means like feeling less anxious, working on being more secure. Okay, and that's a bit painful. And that's why, as a therapist, I help people in that phase, not only looking at assessing those things, but helping with the emotional regulation as well. If this relationship was important, you will hear from your ex. So I think a lot of people, they tell me like, oh yeah, should I break no contact? If your relationship was meaningful, of course your ex you'll get news or opportunities to hear from them. Whether it's for you to break no contact, whether it's from them, it depends, but you will have an opportunity. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about like, I need to contact them right now. The question is to find answers yourself, because right now it's not about the answers you get from them, because you won't get those answers right now. Right? It's really understand, take some time, keep a journal, answer those questions, maybe ask your friends, ask your family, ask people who knew your ex and saw you in that relationship, and ask them, how did you feel about our relationship? Very often we fail to recognize some blind spots, and some people see things that we don't necessarily. When you'll be in touch, if you do the work, if you do this assessment properly, you'll be more equipped, right? Because you'll have way more insight. And again, in terms of the emotional regulation, you'll be able to present yourself in the best possible way, in the sort of solution-oriented way, rather than I want to get you back at all costs. Please take me back. I beg you. I'm nothing without you. No. It's going to be like, okay, we had this challenge. We had those things that we need to work out together. And this is my plan in a way. Okay, it's way more efficient than like, I need to get you. I'm nothing with you. I love you so much. It's not in the script, but that reminds me. Your ex won't get back with you if you tell them that you love them. Okay, they know it already, and it's not by proving your love that they will change their mind. It's really not about that. What will change their mind is that if they see that another relationship can be possible, whether the dynamic, whether the thing that we're not working has been removed. And so there's an element of your personal growth, and there's an element, and this is the thing we can't control, of them accepting that there's an alternative, and that you can't control. And that's why it's very important for you to understand that it's impossible to have a 100% success rate when it comes to getting back with the next. And I never ever promise anyone you'll get back together. I'm always super cautious. I have a feeling whether you're in the right direction. I have the feeling, or I can sense, especially when we are in touch on WhatsApp, with the tone of the message that is going in the right direction and the person is starting to open up to the idea, etc., etc. But there's always an element of uncertainty when it comes to dealing with people. That's what makes my job so fascinating. If you have any question, don't hesitate to shoot them on the comment section, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.